Cincinnati, it's Thursday at 11:08 a.m. Or for him, 12:08 afternoon. It is the great Rob Demovsky of ESPN.com on Wilde Tausch with Brian Bulaga in as our cousin sub of the day. Rob, did you ever play golf with Bulaga?
Not with him, but I believe I was either in the group right behind him or in front of him on at least one, if not two occasions.
Is he long off the tee?
Probably hit into me.
Yeah, I was just going to say.
He probably hit into me a couple times.
I think it's the other way around, Brian. He hits it long.
All right, Rob. We wanted you on because you had your eyes, your ears, your nose. You were there for the entirety of practice yesterday. Now, before we start, you had a little bit of an incident. Not at practice yesterday like Elton Jenkins did. But you said something on was it First Take? No, Get Up. That got a little viral.
I didn't think it was anything that bold. Tausch wouldn't even think it was probably that bold.
Right. Exactly.
All I said was, this is about a week into camp. I said, hey, look, Jordan Love's had one really, really good day, one sort of decent day, and the others that made you think it might be it could be a long season. That's all I said.
Yeah, and the Jordan Love brigade got after you. Not Jordan Love himself, of course. But
I guess I didn't even realize it until a couple people pointed it out, like a day later. So I don't know.
And so the reason I bring this up is not to make you relive that, but I think it's illustrative of how there is a segment of the Packers fan base that it reminds me of that scene in Swingers where Vince Vaughn is talking about how everybody's really cheering for the guy that, really hopes he gets the girl. I feel like there's a segment of the fan base that they just don't want to hear even a balanced review of what Jordan Love does in a practice. And that makes it difficult for us because you and I are wired the same. We want to give you the good, the bad, the ugly, the whole thing. And yesterday, based on what I saw from you and some of the conversations after practice, there was some really good, there was some not so good, and that's what you expect from a young quarterback who is learning on the job how to become an NFL starter. What did you see, and how do you assess Jordan Love's day yesterday against the Bengals when you're being honest and not allowing the Jordan Love Mafia to influence your take?
Yeah, look, a handful of things, Jason, really stood out to me yesterday. One was that he threw an absolute beautiful fade to Henry Pearson, of all people, a fullback, who made like a juggling catch that had this been a receiver, it would have been a routine catch. But it was coming right at us on the sideline, and it could not have been placed more perfectly. I thought, okay, chalk that one up to one of the absolute beautiful Jordan Love throws. Then a little later in practice, they tried to throw a bubble screen to Romeo Doubs in the left flat. And I'm sorry, my voice is a little scratchy, and I'm sitting out in front of my hotel, and a bus just went by, so I hope I'm coming through okay.
Don't breathe that in.
I had to get out of my hotel room. It was like 12 by 12, and I was getting a little claustrophobic. Anyway, he threw this little bubble screen to Romeo Doubs, and Mike Hilton, the slot cornerback, jumped it, picked it off, took it for a 95-yard touchdown. And I thought, oh, well, that's a terrible play, total disaster. And in a game situation, it would be obviously a potential game-wrecking play. But afterwards, I went into the Bengals locker room, and I asked Mike Hilton, seventh-year cornerback, veteran guy, seen a lot. I said, what'd you see there? He goes, look, Jordan made absolutely the right check. They had three guys, Dobbs and two other blockers, to my one. I just happened to know I kind of knew it was coming, so I split the blockers and picked it off. He's like, but Jordan Love made the right read. Every quarterback in the league should check to that play if they see three of their guys against one defensive guy. Mm-hmm. And to me, that told me, okay, this looked like a really bad play, but if you talk to people about it, the result was bad, but from a decision-making standpoint, it was actually a pretty good play. And then, a couple other things that it's just the circumstance of a young team. and this is probably what I should have said in that SportsCenter hit, but I only had about 60 to 90 seconds, and you can't get into everything. But Romeo Doubs had a bad drop. Luke Musgrave dropped a couple. Jaden Reed had either you could call it a drop or just a difficult catch that he didn't make. And those are the kind of things that, can either turn a young quarterback's day either way. If a couple of those plays go really well, Jordan Love looks great. If a couple of them didn't go their way, that they didn't, maybe it's not so good. He threw a no-look pass in 7-on-7 to Luke Musgrave, and Musgrave just either didn't see it coming or wasn't ready for it. And I don't mean to rag on Luke. Luke's had a great camp. I think he's going to be a really, really good player, and he's a dynamic tight end. He just happened to not make that one play. So I just think you add all that together, and you have the potential for this to go either way. And that's all I think I'm trying to say here.
So, and I know Brian's got questions for you, and I'll let him do that next. The other thing I'm wondering, though, is this. When I watched Hard Knocks the other night, and it reminded me not just that Brian Bulaga didn't celebrate with his teammates often enough and he needed to change that behavior, but also it reminded me of how routine Aaron Rodgers made great throws look. And I am no question guilty of this, that I am making sure that when Jordan Love makes a really good throw, I'm making a big deal out of it. Yeah. And if Aaron Rodgers made the same throw, I know damn well I wouldn't make as big of a deal out of it. So it's not like we're all on the sideline rooting against the kid. But there are sometimes throws, and that the insight that you got from Hilton is amazing there. That's the kind of that's why we won John.
Really good.
But he has been up and down, and I don't think there's anything wrong with saying that he's been up and down, because guess what? He's a first-year starter. That's what first-year starters are. It's up and down.
Right. And just one more thing on the Hilton anecdote. That's going to be the lead. They say don't bury the lead. Well, I'm giving the lead away. That's going to be the lead of my story on ESPN.com tomorrow, sort of leading into the game. But I talked to two or three other Bengals players, just what they thought about Love, and I think people will find it as an insightful, interesting read. But, do you remember, was it last year or one of the joint practices? I think it was Andy Dalton. Was Andy Dalton with the Saints last year?
Yes.
And was he the quarterback when they came in for joint practices? Was that last year?
Yes, that was it. Yep.
Andy Dalton, pretty good player, right? Like led the Bengals to 3 or 4 playoff berths. Never won a playoff game, but was a decent player, but not certainly unbelievable. And I watched him make throws that Aaron Rodgers made look routine, that maybe he didn't make look so routine. And it finally dawned on me after 26 years of watching Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers that Andy Dalton is a pretty decent quarterback for 25 of the other teams in the league. And like that's what most of the quarterbacks are. And, right now, I would say if you had to say, what is Jordan Love going to be? I'd say, if he ended up like Andy Dalton and led a team to 3, 4, 5 straight playoff appearances, I could see that. Like, I could definitely see that as a possibility. Could I see him being greater? Absolutely. Could I see it being worse? Sure. But I think what we fail to realize, having been, watching those two quarterbacks, and I don't just mean in games, but every day in practice,
right?
That's not how the rest of the NFL lives. That's the exception. It's not the norm.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with that. But on a point back to practice, Rob, from obviously you explained, the big shots down the field and then the pick, which I always say, which I was telling Jason earlier in the show, I'm not in the film room. I don't see what defense is lining up against one and, what he's being coached on and all that. So for you to get that information is actually very, very helpful. I mean, that bubble pass is something that Aaron did all the time. That's a LaFleur staple. I mean, the blocker's got to block. I mean, at the end of the day. But I guess my question would be, besides like those 3 things or 2 things that stood out to you, right? How did the offense look as a whole, right? Like, I mean, were running the football, normal pass
Yeah.
plays, were balls being completed? Was there movement up front? Were running backs actually getting to the second level? Was that like, did you know that other stuff besides obviously the few splash things that happened?
Yeah, I'm not getting arrested here, so. But there was
Well, that's a nice change of pace.
So I'm going to just throw some numbers at you, Brian, real quick. He was 17 of 29 in team periods. Okay, just from a straight completion percentage. That's pretty good percentage, I think. I would have been about 60%. I'm terrible at math. That's higher than his percentage has been. He was in the mid-50s for most of camp. There were drop balls in there. I thought, for the most part, the pass protection was really, really good. It was outstanding when Elton and Bakhtiari were on the left side. Wasn't quite as good when Royce Newman and Yash Nyman were on the left side. But from a defensive standpoint, who has the best view of the quarterback? It's probably either the middle linebacker or the nose tackle, right? So I talked to DJ Reader, nose tackle for the Bengals, and he said, look, I could hear all of Jordan's calls. He was poised. He made the right checks. He was clear and concise in his decision-making. And DJ Reader said, look, I'm a defensive lineman. I have no idea if his footwork is right, if he's how he throws the ball. But what I can tell is that he made those things look easy, said he could tell that the offensive line believed in what Jordan Love was saying and doing. And to me, like, that kind of stuff speaks volumes about where he is.
Yep.
Now, does that mean he can make a 3-step drop and throw the ball in stride to Jaden Reed running a post or a slant? That part, I don't know that we know yet, and I don't think is fair to say one way or another if he can or can't do it. But if the huddle was a disaster, if they kept having to reset up, realign, I think those were things that you would say, right? You would say as an offensive lineman, well, this is a disaster, right? Like, this is not good. And I don't think I saw maybe one false start penalty, but again, that doesn't necessarily happen. Maybe who knows what was going on there. So I just think if we're looking at signs for why this could work and why it might not work. And I thought yesterday was probably the biggest sign that this thing might work out okay.
Yeah. So the operation was smooth is essentially what, I think DJ was trying to tell you is that the operation seemed smooth. It was a good operation. I also
noticed one other thing, Brian, I also noticed, and I think Jason would tell you that in camp, they haven't been getting to the huddle or getting to the line as quickly with tempo. I thought they did that yesterday. There were a couple plays where they went tempo, and it looked a little bit like what Aaron used to do and what you guys used to do. You know better than I do that when you're going tempo, how important everything is to be, well connected and well synced up. And I thought they did that a couple times. And the only thing that's disappointing about joint practices is you have to make a choice, right? Like, I decided I was going to watch Jordan Love. I never got to see what the Packers defense looked like against the Bengals because they were on the other field. Now, with Joe Burrow not being there, maybe it wouldn't have mattered. I just thought that was an interesting aspect of watching joint practices.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, did you not that I take a bunch of stock in it because I hated the drill when I played, and once I was able to not take one-on-one reps, I never took them because I didn't like the drill. But I'm assuming they did those, right? They just didn't do the DB one-on-ones.
Correct.
How did the interior look to you? Minus Elton Jenkins, right? Like, we know what Elton's about. We know that. Yeah. I'm talking about center, right guard, and even right tackle. How did those look to you in the reps that you saw? You said that the pass pro was good with Elton in there and David, which makes sense. They can slide right and help out the right guard and the right tackle. Just from one-on-one standpoints, how'd they look? I mean, did they look overmatched? Did they look good? How did things look?
It's funny that you say that because I remember going up to you in the locker room and we'd ask you about one-on-ones and you were like, "Oh, that drill, that drill's a bunch of crap. That drill's BS."
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I think
I can't help but laugh. I can't help but laugh.
I mean, you know, my standpoint of the drill, the way that I like to look at the drill, and you know, maybe this helps you out or maybe it doesn't from what you saw, but like I look at if guys are getting beat initially right away, right? Like that's the things that pop out to me. If they lose on a second or third move, a lot of those things don't work out in a game, right? Like the ball's gone.
Because there's help.
But like,
there's help.
And like the D linemen get to rush wherever they want in one-on-one rep. It's just wide open space. And that, again, that's not the way it works in the game.
It's not real football. It's not real.
It's just not real. So, I mean, like, that's the question. Like,
I'll say this. Brian, I'll say this. I think you would really like watching Zach Tom play right tackle. Like, I think you would. I think that's the one guy in the one-on-ones I think that stood out and has stood out is just the way his initial punch. Like, I mean, it's he gets his hands on a guy, and it's basically over. You know, and I think as the guy who played that position at a high level for a long time, I think I would love to watch Zach Tom play right tackle. I think that would be pretty interesting to see what your take is, because you know a hell of a lot more than we do about technique. But that's the one guy to me that's jumped out as being really, really impressive, not only in the one-on-one but in the team stuff also.
So do you, from looking at, you know, this offensive line right now, do you think Tom kind of is the front runner at that right tackle position?
Well, he's a front runner somewhere. I mean, he's going to be in the top five, no question about it. Whether it's going to be at the odd thing is, and maybe you'd know better than me, but to me the odd thing is center or right tackle don't seem to be like a position that it's either or, right? Like usually it's center or guard or guard and tackle, not tackle and center. But that speaks to how athletic he is and things like that. But he's got to be on the offensive line, in my opinion. I mean, I don't see how if you're going to roll your best five out there that he isn't one of them. I'm not ready to give up on Josh Myers as a center yet. He's played a lot of football. He's played a lot of good football. I do think there's some consistency issues there that they need to iron out. So I think it more depends on Josh Myers, depending on where Zach Tom lines up. I think Josh Nijman's a really good right tackle as well. I don't know that he's a great left tackle. And again, what the difference is, I'm not sure. I mean, you were going to move to left tackle one year and then obviously got hurt and, you know, ended up back at right tackle, if I remember right. So I don't know. I don't know how that transition is, but to me, those guys, there's positions for all those guys to be successful. And one of the things that this offense really has going for it is that line. I mean, there's no question about the left side is solid. Zach Tom looks really good. I think John Runyon's a pretty good player. And then if they can get Josh Myers or whoever's playing center to be consistent, I think they got a chance.
Yeah, I mean, I said it the last time I was on. My biggest concerns up front was from the center over to the right. Like that was my biggest concern is how those three perform. I mean, it makes me very optimistic hearing that that's a competition for right tackle right now. I mean, that because
no doubt.
That means that those guys are Yash and Tom are battling that thing out to see who earns that job, which is huge, which I really like. Right guard is Runyon, correct? If I'm saying it's Runyon.
Yeah, that's right. And you know what the crazy thing is? We haven't even talked about Sean Ryan, who was a third-round pick, Jason, last year, if I remember right.
Yep.
And he obviously had a lost year last year. Couldn't win the starting spot, didn't play at all, had the suspension. But he looks like a different player. Definitely in the one-on-ones, he looks like a different player this year. I can't say for sure how I've seen him do in team, just haven't noticed. But, that's a guy we haven't even talked about who was a third-round pick last year, so obviously is really talented. So, I do think they have a chance to be a pretty good line, and obviously the two running backs are good. This is just kind of an unrelated topic, and every year there's always like a third running back that looks really good, but I can't help but but notice how many big plays that Tyler Goodson makes as the third running back. I know Patrick Taylor is really solid, probably the steadier player, but I don't know. I mean, we may see Tyler Goodson run for 60, 70, 80 yards tomorrow night. And again, we've seen running backs do that in the preseason, and they never really replicate it. But he looks like he just knows how to follow blockers and find holes. So sort of related to that upfront stuff, Tyler Goodson looks pretty impressive to me.
Well, he is an Iowa guy, and we know those Iowa guys tend to be pretty good football players. Present company excluded, obviously. All right, Rob, we'll let you get back to your time in Cincinnati. Enjoy. I don't know if you're a Skyline chili guy or not. I hear Grader's ice cream is very good.
Not really, but I did have a black cherry chocolate chip ice cream cone from Grader's last night.
Nice.
So it's pretty good.
Well, you, like David Bakhtiari says of Jordan Love, when it comes to our show, you are Hall of Fame first ballot for us, buddy. We appreciate you. Thanks.
Great to talk to you guys. We'll be seeing you.
Thanks,
That
Rob.
is Rob Demovsky live from Cincinnati, where apparently he's standing in the belfry of a church, it would appear.